I worked the closing shift at a home improvement store in the quiet town of Crestwood. My shift partner, Emma, is a sweet but shy cashier who, unfortunately, often becomes the target of unwelcome attention from customers. Despite the constant flirtation from contractors and handymen, Emma handles it with grace, always politely declining their advances. Emma and I have grown close over time, becoming best friends. Covering each other's lunch breaks and sharing stories usually make the hours fly by. One evening, Emma returned from lunch looking unsettled. She mentioned a man who had been unusually persistent in his attempts to ask her out. She had told him she was in a relationship, but he didn't seem to take it well. I brushed it off as another overeager customer and joked about it, but later that night, the same man returned. Emma was helping a customer in the lumber section, so it was just me at the register when he approached. He looked normal enough, but something about his demeanor was off. He asked for Emma, claiming she had agreed to go out with him. I told him she had left for the day, hoping he would go away. His expression darkened, and he insisted he needed to see her again. I fibbed, saying Emma was my fiancée, hoping that would deter him. Instead, his face twisted in anger, and he muttered something about how someone like me didn't deserve someone as pretty as Emma. After a tense moment, he finally left. When Emma returned, I told her about the encounter. She was visibly shaken, but found my fiancé's excuse pretty amusing. We laughed it off, thinking it was over. Weeks passed without incident, and we nearly forgot about the strange man. One night, as we were getting ready to close, we heard a loud bang on the front doors. Our hearts skipped a beat when we saw him again, his face pressed against the glass, eyes wild with obsession. "We're closed," I shouted, but he wouldn't leave. Emma told him to go away, but he screamed back, saying that he wasn't there for her, he was there for me. He wanted to take me out so she could be his. The threat was clear, he intended to kill me. I told Emma to run to the manager's office and call the police while I stayed to keep an eye on him. Fear gripped me as he started ramming the doors, his crazed determination sending shivers down my spine. The doors rattled and I felt the situation slipping out of control. Just then, Emma returned with a 2x4 piece of wood in hand, yelling that the cops were on their way. Seeing this, the man finally retreated. When the police arrived, they reviewed the security footage and soon arrested him. Neither Emma or myself felt safe working there anymore. We quit our jobs and found new ones as we continued our studies at the local college. The experience bonded us even more, and we remained close friends. The incident was a stark reminder of the dangers that can arise when someone refuses to take no for an answer. For Emma, it was a daily battle with unwanted attention, and for me, it became a fight for survival. We were lucky that night, but it left an indelible mark, a constant reminder to stay vigilant and support each other in the face of such threats. Before we dive into the next story, if you're joining us for the first time, please subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon to stay updated with our upcoming scary tales. Your support means the world to us. Share these stories with your friends and family. I want to personally say thank you for your support. Now let's continue. I was just settling into my first solo shift at the Silver Pines Motel. It was a modest job, the pay wasn't great, but it was an office gig, something I needed. My friend Jake had helped me get the job, and after a few days of training with the owner and a couple of nights shadowing Jake, I was left to handle the 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift alone. The office was a small building with large glass windows and a glass door, giving a clear view of the parking lot and the dark, empty road beyond. A security monitor displayed feeds from cameras around the property, but it was usually pretty quiet at night. Around 1 a.m., a man walked in. He seemed normal enough at first and asked if there were any rooms available. Usually if someone seemed sketchy, we were told to lie and say no, but he didn't raise any immediate red flags, so I said yes. As I started to check him in, he began swatting at the air and making spitting noises like he was being attacked by invisible insects. I tried to ignore his odd behavior and hurried through the check-in process. I handed him his key and he went to his room. Moments later, he was back, slamming his hand on the glass door. The noise made me jump, and I looked up to see him glaring at me through the glass. "I can't get into my room," he growled. "Why won't you let me into my room?" Trying to stay calm, I suggested maybe his key was faulty and offered to give him another one. The look in his eyes was unsettling, a mix of anger and something else I couldn't quite place. I handed him a new key, and he stomped back to his room. Texted Jake, hoping for some advice, but he was likely asleep. Watching the security feed, I saw the man trudging back towards the office. Panic surged through me, and I locked myself in the back office, clutching a small pocket knife I kept for protection. The man was at the office door again, yelling, "Why won't you let me into my room? Do you not like me?" Desperation clouded my judgment, and instead of calling the police, I decided to face him. I told him I was on the phone and would be out shortly, then frantically tried calling Jake again. No response. I took a deep breath and stepped out of the office. The man was not at the door, he was in the bathroom, talking to himself. I heard him muttering angrily, "Kill her, kill her." My heart pounded in my chest. When he emerged, I smiled weakly and said, "Your key was broken." "Let me escort you to your room," he agreed, and I held my knife hidden in my sleeve as we walked. He insisted on walking behind me, and I kept glancing back, my nerves on edge. He stopped at the wrong door, and I quickly corrected him, leading him to his actual room. After he went inside, I rushed back to the office and locked the door. I realized he had been trying to get into a room occupied by a lone woman. The next guest to check in was a police officer from a nearby town. I confided in him about the strange man, and he promised to keep an eye out. The man returned the following night, but I had the doors locked and told him we were fully booked. He left, and I breathed a sigh of relief. When my boss returned from vacation, I told him what had happened. He dismissed it, saying it wasn't a big deal. I continued working the night shift for another year, encountering more odd guests, but that man's terrifying behavior stayed with me. It was a stark reminder of the dangers lurking in the shadows of the night, and the importance of trusting your instincts and taking precautions, no matter how ordinary the job might seem. My name is Jack, and what I'm about to share with you still haunts my every step. A hurricane had ravaged our sleepy town a few months back, leaving countless homes in ruins. The influx of displaced residents had made the Willowbrook Inn a temporary sanctuary, but as the weeks dragged on, the place grew eerily quiet, quieter than even before the storm. I worked the night shift from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m., a stretch of hours that felt eternal in the silence. Most nights were uneventful. I could go hours without seeing a soul. Our break room, a simple space with a coffee machine, fridge, and a couple of worn-out sofas, became my hiding space. A bell at the front desk was the only alert system if a guest needed something. And so one night I was in the back when I heard a deep voice calling out, "Hello." The man stood on the other side of the counter, separated by a glass barrier. He asked for towels, his voice tinged with an odd urgency. I handed him a couple through the opening, and as he took them, his eyes bore into mine with a look that made my skin crawl. He walked away, but I couldn't shake the unease. Watching him on the security monitors, I saw him rubbing the towels against his face in a way that sent a chill down my spine. 10 minutes later, the man was back, this time claiming his key card wasn't working. When I asked for his room number, he rattled off something nonsensical, something with letters when our rooms were strictly numbered. His expression shifted. He pressed his face against the glass and whispered with a smile, "I'm going to kill you." Panic surged through me. I shouted back, threatening to call the police, and did just that. He only laughed, mocking me as I spoke to the dispatcher. Eventually, he left, his slow, deliberate steps echoing in the quiet lobby. I spent the rest of my shift in the lobby, too shaken to retreat to the break room. As my shift ended at 2 a.m., I walked out into the cold night, my thin jacket offering little protection. With my hood up and hands shoved deep in my pockets, I tried to shake off the feeling of being watched. Halfway through the parking lot, I heard a voice from the bushes. Ignoring it, I quickened my pace, my footsteps echoing in the silent streets. I turned down a residential street, the stillness around me almost suffocating. Then, I heard it, footsteps behind me. I turned around, my heart pounding, to see a figure hiding behind a car, his eyes peeking out from the shadows. The same menacing voice whispered, "I'm going to kill you." The man stepped out, his crazed smile illuminated by the dim street light. I ran, my lungs burning, my feet barely touching the ground as I reached the nearest house with an upstairs light on. I rang the doorbell frantically, screaming for help. Just as the man's hands gripped around my throat, the door flew open. A man that just happened to be nearby yelled at my attacker, who immediately released his grip and fled. I collapsed, gasping for air, and my savior pulled me inside, called the police, and offered me a glass of water. The police had arrived. They collected the CCTV footage, and days later asked me to identify the man from a lineup. As I stared at the faces before me, none seemed to match the terror imprinted in my memory. I left the station with an unsettling doubt, hoping I hadn't let a monster slip through my fingers. To this day, I can still hear his voice in my nightmares, whispering that chilling promise, "I'm going to kill you."